Hey everybody, this is Heidi, and you're listening to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. We all know that the fashion industry is brutally competitive and it takes loads of hard work to get ahead. The problem is that everyone's secretive and tight-lipped about their ways. After working as a designer and educator for over a decade, I wanted to help break down those barriers and bring you valuable knowledge from industry experts, and this show is exactly where you'll find that. Whether you're trying to break into the fashion world, make yourself more marketable, launch your own label, or become a successful freelancer, we'll help you get ahead in the cutthroat fashion industry. This is episode 31 of the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast, and today I'm chatting with Sarah Coronado. Sarah launched an insanely successful Kickstarter campaign for her underwear line, Privé, and in this interview, she's going to tell us all about it. Now, her underwear line is not just any underwear line. It is the world's first period-friendly travel panty. And that even in itself, that description does not do it justice. You guys have to check out the show notes, check out her website, bloomsprivé.com, and take a look at how this underwear works. It has got these clasps on the side, and it self-packs into a little pouch inside of the underwear. It's a really, really, really cool item that she created out of necessity, and I can't wait for her to share your entire story. Now, Sarah had no background or experience in fashion when she got started, and she figured out the hard way how to launch and build not just one, but two fashion brands. First, she launched a denim line about 5 or 6 years ago, and now she has her brand Privé. Sarah did what any driven and ambitious entrepreneur would do, and she got out there and figured out how to do everything by Googling, reading articles, and reaching out to anyone and everyone she could to get help. Now, the problem with that was that she didn't really know anybody in fashion since she didn't work in the industry and she had no contacts. And so that meant by reaching out and cold calling.
Reach out, do cold calls, cold emails, and continue to just be driven by your own passion, because you are as smart and as talented as anyone else out there. And that's one thing that we often forget, is that we get in our own way.
Now, in our interview, Sarah walks us through the exact step-by-step process of what it takes to launch a successful Kickstarter campaign. And just importantly, she talks about how to keep up momentum and to continue and engage with your customers how the campaign ends. It's a really, really great story, and her journey is really fun and inspiring, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to this episode. Now, I know I always ask you to share the show, and I'm going to ask you to do so again right now. If you enjoy this podcast, here's what I want you to do. I always talk about the value of building relationships and providing people with value. So if you need something, like Sarah did, she needed help, she needed support in the industry. And sometimes it's not just about going out there and asking for people to give you things, but to also provide them with value. And maybe this episode, or maybe one of the other episodes in this show, is a way that you could provide value to someone who you need something from in this industry. It could be someone you don't know who you want to pick their brain for 10 minutes on the phone about how to start your fashion label or anything. So think about someone that you need a favor from, and instead of just going out directly and saying, hey, I have this question, can you help me answer it? Think about how you can give them value, and that may be in sharing this podcast with them. Hey, here's this really great episode I listened to of the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast, and I thought you would enjoy it as well. I wanted to share it with you as I thought it could really help you on your ventures in your fashion career, launching your label, whatever it is that they're doing. And that's a great lead-in to then asking them for what you need from them. So always think about how you can provide value for others. It really helps build relationships, and that just may be in sharing this podcast. So if you have someone that you need something from, why don't you lead with sharing the podcast and giving them some value, and then going in and asking for what you need. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. You guys, I really appreciate the help. Now, to access the show notes for today's episode, visit sfdnetwork.com/31. All right, on to the interview with Sarah. Welcome, Sarah, to the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. I am so excited to talk to you. You have shared part of your journey with me and your amazing, insane success on Kickstarter with your brand. But today, I'm really excited to hear more about everything that's going on. And so to start out, can you please introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do in the fashion industry?
Thank you for having me, Heidi. I'm super excited to be here. I started fashion design about 6 years ago with no background to ever have started studying fashion. And I'm actually a project and program manager in the high-tech security industry. So for 12 years, I was doing project management in corporations, and on the side, after work and during just burning the midnight oil, I would be starting my business ideas. And one particular evening, I thought I would get into designing jeans, and so that was about 6-7 years ago. And the denim that I started was called Lotus Premium Denim, and that was the beginning of the entire Lotus and Bloom's empire, that brand that I'm building right now. And I really wanted to just make something that would fit me, having no prior knowledge to fashion or fashion school or anything like that. I just wanted to create something. And as an entrepreneur, anytime they say that necessity is the mother of all inventions. So anytime I envisioned something and I wanted to make something a little bit better, whatever I saw in the market wasn't, if it didn't satisfy me, I just wanted it to create something better. I just, took my idea and I would prototype it. And that was the start of really my fashion career. I made jeans that fit me really well. And when I got my friends to try it on, they loved it. And so then, we started the idea of just creating denim made to fit women of average to petite height. And then it really, really caught wind here in California, and in the Bay Area is where I'm from. So from then on, I just started traveling up and down the state. I even did a Kickstarter for the denim, did trunk shows for it. And after that, I opened up a yoga studio, quit my corporate job. And it was then and there that I had the idea of developing what is now called Bloom's Privé, underwear for women that is offers women quick change, and it's travel friendly and also period friendly. So anytime I needed something, it was born out of my own desire, my own necessity, and I just took the idea and I would just prototype whatever I could think of, and then validated it with a couple of other women, and the rest is history. So that's really my fashion background. It's not a formal one, but it definitely is driven from my own passion and my own needs that I needed to solve.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just have to say a couple things. One is that these underwear, because I've seen them in real life, and it's really hard to do them justice in an audio format. So everybody, you have to check out the show notes. I'll put a link to all the videos and stuff, how these underwear sort of pack up into themselves and how super functional they are. And then, but going back, like, I had no idea that was the beginning of your journey, these jeans, like 6 or 7 years ago. And so where I really want to start then is with that, because you were not in the fashion industry. You had no background. And I hear a lot of designers, or let me rephrase that. I hear a lot of people who are not in the industry say, I have an idea, I want to do something, but like, where do I even get started? And so can you talk us through a little bit, like really minutia? What did you actually do to figure out you have no knowledge in how to make a product or manufacture a product? And so where did you even get started to, manufacture denim of all things? That's not an easy task.
Right. So having no knowledge of or contacts or resources, I went to the first thing that I could get my hands on, which is the internet, Google, YouTube, and researched, read articles as much as I could. I was obsessed. This is something that is not for the faint of heart, because once an idea grabs a hold of you, it is no longer your idea. It is the universe's idea that chose you to carry it out. And that's how I felt. I felt obsessed with having to figure out, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to get it done? Who could help me out? And you start with just baby steps, every single day. Find an article, read something, learn something, make some cold calls. And that's how I started in the denim business. I actually cold called Stefano Aldegheri, which is, I believe, the creative director at one point for Citizens and Seven Jeans. So he had a studio that he was helping like local artists and up and coming designers. And I cold called him and I gave him my idea, and he said, "Hey, I'm gonna point you to a production manager that can help you out. You're just getting started, but when you in a couple of years, if you're looking to expand, call me back and we'll talk then." And that was all it took, just getting someone's time. And, it's very scary to put yourself in a position where you might get rejected. You might call someone, they might not have the time of day for you. You might not even ever get to them. You email them, they don't respond back. But don't take it personal. People are so busy. And those who are truly successful, many of them have it in their heart, and desire to help people make it and achieve their success, their level of success. So when they see someone who is earnest in reaching out, starting out new, most likely they will try to help out. And I think that the more often that you try, the luckier you get, because it's a numbers game, So yeah. I would say, reach out, do cold calls, cold emails, and continue to just be driven by your own passion, because you are as smart and as talented as anyone else out there. And that's one thing that we often forget, is that we get in our own way, and it's not anyone else, it's us. And so that mental barrier is the first thing you have to cross and overcome.
I love that on so many levels, because it is, at some point, it's just baby steps, and it's Googling and it's researching and digging and digging and digging and reading the articles and figuring a lot of this out. And then from there, though, it is putting yourself out there. And I love that you say, the people that are out there who have all this great knowledge and advice and who are experts, I don't remember if you used that exact word, but a lot of them are willing and happy to give you, 20 minutes on the phone and can point you in the right direction or connect you with someone. I not to compare myself with the guy you chatted with who worked for Citizens or Seven, but I just did that with someone the other day who wanted to start a swimmer line, and she wasn't sure where to go, and I was introduced to her through an industry contact and was able to give her a ton of advice. And so don't be afraid to outreach to those people. Obviously they can't take every call, like you said, but you do have to put yourself out there, and the numbers game. The more you get out there, the more calls you're going to get, the more feedback, the more input to help put you in the right direction. So I love everything you said there. So sort of scooting forward, you did your denim line, you got some traction with that. And then what changed and made you, I think you found a gap in the market to introduce the underwear, but, talk us through that transition a little bit, and then the beginning journey of building the Bloom's Privé brand.
Yeah. So this is, I couldn't have made this up if I even tried, because it's like you can plan all you want, and they say that life happens while you're busy making plans, because you can, you can have this 5-year goal, you can have this outlook, you can have this path that you're going to just keep, on. But most often, life will send you messages and surprises, and you have to just follow where it leads you to. And for me, I knew that it wasn't necessarily the fashion that my passion was around. It was what the product in the fashion embodied. It's the message. It's for me, it's the lotus, and the lotus is this beautiful flower that is that thrives through adversity. It grows from the mud and it grows up and reaches the light. And I liken that to our journey in life. And so, calling the jeans Lotus Premium Denim. Then when I left and I pivoted, it was mainly out of just manpower, lack of manpower, and also capital, because I bootstrapped. I was bootstrapping my startups, and also working corporate, working full time. It was really, really difficult to get something going, especially in the denim world, which is fully saturated, a couple years ago, and I imagine now as well. So without the capital, without the team, without, really, the ability to really kind of move this and scale it out in a way that I wanted to, I told myself, okay, well, what's plan B? for you? And that answer for me was, okay, well, I know that I really want to help people. And I know that while I'm learning through this whole, raising capital and getting, a business started with the right amount of funding, I wanted to also, because I didn't limit myself to one dream. So, my overarching dream was to change the world. So in a better way and to offer that type of love and community for all people. So I wanted to open a yoga studio. Yoga was something that really healed me, and I took it into my own personal practice, and it really transformed the way I thought, the way I behaved, the way I worked, everything. And so I wanted to open the studio and carry that Lotus brand in it. And so I called it Live Lotus Studio, Yoga Studio. And my tagline from the denim was made to fit, born to inspire. And then the tagline for the yoga studio was live your journey. And so I carried it through, and it was a really, really phenomenal, great success. We have a huge community here in Japantown, downtown San Jose. And so, when I opened the studio, I decided, okay, I'm going to jump with both feet in now, because I've been sort of, dipping my toes, my foot, my ankle into the water with the denim. I knew that I was an entrepreneur. I knew that I was born to create things, because I couldn't stop focusing on anything else except to just create and share, my vision. But it wasn't until I opened the yoga studio that I decided to quit, my day job. And that was a huge risk. That was something that was, 8 years or 10 years in the making, for me to have to decide to finally do it. And so when I did it, I knew that there was no going back. And I left the denim world momentarily so that I could open a yoga studio and see if I could, start building my brand in this light instead. And then eventually, when I was able to afford to go back into the, the denim world, that was my plan. So, and that's a funny plan, because lo and behold, when I was teaching, I opened it for 2 months. I was teaching a yoga class. I happened to have experienced getting my period early. So, there I was, in my Tadasana pose, asana, and I wanted nothing more than to go to the restroom or change. So I waited until the end of class, and I didn't have an extra pair of underwear or anything. And that moment, I realized I really wish I could have just changed into brand new underwear and taken the old one and put it somewhere discreetly. I had no solution, no way to do that. So that night, actually that moment, I thought of an idea of detachable underwear. And I went to prototyping it, went to the store, got a couple of, sample underwear that I can, play around with and cut and sew. And I sewed up until 4:30 in the morning that very night, tried it on the next day, loved it. Made some more, put a pocket in the front so that it could self-pack into the pocket, and I would be able to carry a few pair of underwear with me discreetly, conveniently, and change it anytime I wanted to with the detachable sides that I made, so that I never needed to take off my shoes, my yoga pants, or anything that I was wearing. It was as easy as replacing a sanitary pad, and discreet and super comfortable. So that was what happened. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I just opened my yoga studio, not, no more than 2 months. And here I am now involved in another product innovation, product idea. So that's what I was saying back to, like, life happens while you're busy making plans. Well, I thought I was going to develop this, yoga studio and franchise it out and grow it. But obviously the universe had other plans for me. And when this idea came and it hit me so hard, I decided, I need to share this with the world. And so I've just been juggling both the studio, and with the help of my amazing co-founder and partners on the team, I've been able to continue growing the studio while focusing on building the Blooms Privé startup.
That's such a fantastic story, and I love how you had this moment in where you're teaching and your period comes, and then like that night the product was just born. You got your hands dirty and you cut and sewed and you just did it, and then took it and ran with it. And so tell me about, what happened then, because you told me some numbers when I met you at an event. We were at a mutual event in Chicago, and you told me about this insane Kickstarter that you launched for the Blooms Privé underwear. And so talk a little bit about that. Like, why did you decide to do a Kickstarter? When did you know you were ready? How did you know that was the right path to go? And then I want to talk through, how you were able to make that an insane success. I won't spoil the number. I'm going to let you share that with everybody. But because it was so impressive. But why did you go that path, or how did you know you were ready to go that path?
So I have an amazing advisor who has been supporting me in my ideas. And when I told him I wanted to, develop this new innovative underwear design and that I've not seen anything like it in the market, he said, I know where you can launch it, do your proof of concept and be able to show investors later on that, this idea, that you validated it, that there is a minimal viable product out there that people would want. Do it on Kickstarter. And I said, no, I've done Kickstarter. I did it for the jeans, and I don't really know much about digital marketing and ads. And, I'm not, again, I wasn't too confident in being able to really do it and, succeed wildly in it. So I was, not too, I guess I wasn't too excited when I was, given that advice, because I just didn't know if I was able to get the numbers that I wanted to get, from the launch. But I went with it anyways, because even if you're scared, after you give it a couple nights, to think it over, you just buckle up and you try to enjoy the ride. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I knew that he was right about having a platform like Kickstarter to show proof of concept, to validate the idea even before you manufacture it. And that to me was the one thing that I know Kickstarter is really great at. But I also knew that it was a really difficult platform, or more difficult for women-based fashion products. It's very high technology and geared towards the male population. Just if you look at all of the products, all of the projects on Kickstarter. So I knew that it was an early adopter market as well. So it would be hard to have such a high-touch, tactile product like Blooms Privé on a platform that is mainly more conceptual, more technology-oriented, or creative, like, in film or photography-oriented. But I still went with it anyways, and that's what I did. It took me 9 months, close to 9 months, to plan and execute the launch, and then we had a 2-month-long live campaign. So that was close to about a year in planning and execution.
Yeah. Okay, so first I want to just ask, because I know everybody out there listening, they're going to say, well, where'd you get an advisor? Where's this magical person that's giving you all this great advice coming from? How do I find one? So where did you find your advisor? How'd that relationship happen?
Yeah, my advisor actually was someone that I was working at my corporate job, and before I decided to quit, I said, okay, let me see if I can just get another job. And again, I was scared to jump with both feet into the entrepreneurial and startup life. So he was the CEO of another company that I applied to work for. And interestingly enough, when we met, I told him about my background, that I was an entrepreneur, that I moonlighted all of my ideas at night and worked on it. And he, in my interview, we enjoyed the conversation, but he ended up not hiring me. A year later, I decided to quit my job anyways, open the yoga studio, and thought nothing of it. A year later, he finds me on LinkedIn, or he connects with me on LinkedIn, and we catch up, and he saw that I quit my job and that I opened up my own yoga studio. We met up for coffee, and talked it over, and, he said, the reason why I never hired you was because I knew that you needed to start your own company. And from then on, the friendship, the mentorship that he provided eventually led me to asking him if he would, become officially and formally my advisor for Bloom's Privé.
Okay. So pretty organic relationship.
Pretty organic.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So then getting into the Kickstarter. So first of all, I'm really glad, that you're super transparent about the timeline, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I can just put up a Kickstarter like next week and get all this money. But the reality is there's a lot of planning and building and prep work that goes into it, not to intimidate anybody, but to be really honest and transparent about what does go on and what goes into a successful campaign. So I know we don't have an insane amount of time, but, give us what you would consider some of the high-level steps of building that campaign, planning that, and then going through the actual 2-month campaign. Like, what does that actually look like? So, like, for example, if I'm out listening to this and I have this great idea, and I feel really, I've maybe made some prototypes, and I think, I could validate this on Kickstarter. Like, where should I start? What are those 9 months going to look like? Like, how much can you walk us through that process?
Absolutely. So first off, the 9 months was from the time that you decide to want to do it to the time that you execute or you go live. And you have to think about your script. Your video is really, really important. So putting together the vision, the creative team behind it, making sure that you have the right product shots, making sure that you have the right video put together, and the editing of it. And that in itself is really fun because it's really storytelling, but it's truly important to tell the right story through your video. And I can't stress it enough that you need to work with someone that you trust in carrying out your vision, a videographer that really understands what story you want to tell, and in the tone that you want to tell it, and in just the setting, and the delivery of it. And then the other part is it deals with marketing and advertising. So, you need to build your list of emails so that you can continue to share your launch announcements and things like that. So get with someone, whether it's outsourced or not. For me, I had to outsource it because one of the things I learned in my own project was, if you don't know what you're doing, don't try to learn it within, the time frame that you're supposed to focus on just launching your product. And for me, it was, if I didn't know how to necessarily do online marketing or digital marketing or ads, and, there's all the nomenclature associated with that. If I didn't really know what, if that wasn't my expertise, then it was better use of my time and also investment to find a partner that can do that. And, an ads partner, a marketing partner, or someone that can oversee all of that. And that is so critical because you need eyeballs to get to your page, to get to your site. And that's where the conversion magic happens. So for me, it was really focus on the storytelling, really understand and simplify it, dumb it down so much that a 5-year-old can get it. And then really focus on the right partnership, whether it's in-house or it's outsourced out, with, ads and marketing.
Okay, so before you go any further, I want to stop you there, and I want to unpack a couple things. So one is, did you do any pre-Kickstarter validation? Because, you're going into this, you're investing a lot of money and a lot of time over these 9 months. And at this point, you're like, I don't really want to. I can't afford for this to flop. And so I know your advisor said we should do a Kickstarter with this great idea, but did you do any pre-validation before starting planning all the Kickstarter?
I didn't do any pre-validation before the Kickstarter, but I did do a pre-launch before the launch date. So we gave ourselves a month, like 3 to 4 weeks before launching, running ads, testing the ads, and seeing what messaging worked, doing A/B testing on landing pages and things like that. And so we tested more on our messaging than we did on the product validity, because in validating the product idea and need, it was done more organically for me in my studio. A lot of women come here to either teach or to take the classes, specifically women, because that's my market.
Sure.
And so those women that did come through the door, I would ask them, I have this idea, I have this product, is this something that you think you would need, And so I did a lot of that before I eventually agreed to launch it on Kickstarter. So I needed to make sure that the women in my community, at the very minimum, understood the need for the product and would want to wear it. And so in my prototyping phase, it wasn't just that day that the day that I had that idea, and then another week out, I was ready to move forward. It was more like 6 months. It was me testing it out with my team, and then sewing a couple more samples and giving it out to instructors, to some yoga students, and then really myself just, wearing it in and out, day in and day out, washing it, making sure that this was something I would really be comfortable with and be confident in wearing, and also be confident in developing to share with other women. So my own validation phase prior to Kickstarter was about 6 months.
Okay, and you did involve a lot of other people in that. So you weren't just creating it in a vacuum and making sure you liked it. Like, you gave out samples and the prototypes and got feedback. So I would consider that a pre-validation to the Kickstarter.
Yeah, and it was local. So I didn't really send it out to anyone, but it was mainly within my own community.
Yeah, but you were still getting real feedback from real people. So, right. Yeah, I think that's because that's priceless, making sure that they like it, making sure it's something they would actually buy, that they would actually wear, that they're comfortable in. Okay, and then next is, you mentioned like building your email list. And so that's something that is talked about a lot, but I think can feel really intimidating. Like, well, where do I even start? Like, how do I get people to sign up for my email list? So what did you do to build that and get people signed up?
So I did do a session with a marketing consultant, and she was pretty phenomenal. And I took her advice in building out, I think she called it an email marketing automation. And so I pre-built a story of maybe 6 emails into, the automation trigger in my email marketing tool called MailChimp. And so we would post ads and get people to sign up to see a product video. And then they would sign up with their email. They would see the product video after they signed up. And then once they signed up, with their email, then it triggers the email automation, the email list to send out to them. So every week, one email would be sent out to them. And it's just a story of, how Bloom's Privé was developed. And it would just carry them along through the story. So then we developed a relationship with our subscribers. We didn't, inundate them with too much, communication to begin with. But every week we gave one piece of the story, and we timed it so that by the time they got their last email, the Kickstarter launch date was, within that same week or 2 weeks, so that they would have that information still fresh in their mind. So that was one approach and method that worked really well, and it was pretty successful.
And did you do Facebook ads for that primarily, or Google ads?
Yes.
Okay, Facebook.
Facebook.
Okay. And I love that so much because I've talked to other brands on the show about the importance of including your audience and your customer in the journey. Like, they want to hear the behind the scenes story of how your product was built and made, and they want to be part of that. And so I love that you pieced that out, a little bit over 6 weeks and delivered them that experience to be part of the brand. It's not you just selling them some product, but it's you really involving them in the journey and the story. So that was really, really smart and phenomenal that worked out. So Facebook ads drove them into the 6-week email, and then you timed that with the launch of the Kickstarter. And so did everything kind of explode right when the Kickstarter launched at that time?
Actually, we did hit some really high sales numbers in the first week, and it was actually more organic than it was from the email list that we collected from our pre-launch period. So a lot of friends and family supported us, and that's really important. To make sure that if you're proud about your product and your launch, really get out there and really share it with your community, with your network, because most often than not, those who really admire your bravery and your courage, and if you happen to have a really great product, they're going to support it. And so we saw that, and we were so grateful that most of the sales that came through were at first organic and within our own community. It didn't really spike in terms of conversion from just complete strangers, people that really found the ads and came in to view the video and the Kickstarter page. That didn't really take off until a month later in our 2-month program or project. And that's because we actually did not run live ads in the first couple of weeks in the live campaign. And that was a huge mistake. So I can only imagine if we actually ran ads, at the start of the 60-day campaign, how much more we could have gotten in terms of, backers. But when we started to run the ads, in the second leg of the campaign, then we really started getting that, the conversions that really blew us out of the water. So
now seems like as good a time as ever. Will you share the numbers that you guys did? What was your goal and then what you actually did?
Yeah, so our goal was pretty modest, but I wanted to hit at least 11,000 and be able to secure an order, a production run with the factory. At the end of the campaign, we hit 87,000.
Like, what's that, 8 times? Pretty much. Yeah.
About 8 times, yeah, or 7.
Congratulations. I just got the chills. It's so exciting. Congratulations. From 11,000 to 87,000. What did that feel like? Was it so surreal?
It was pretty surreal. It was a lot of hard work, and we learned so much from this launch, but we just never, I think for me, that number is, it's pretty incredible. But for me, what I learned through the process is invaluable. And that was just the camaraderie, the team, that we would just come in and day out, waiting to hear that next notification from Kickstarter. We all had it on our phone, on the apps on our phone. So, just doing anything we could, tweaking the page, getting emails out, sending updates to the backers, and continuing to share our story and getting press, and everything was everything was invaluable as a learning experience. And, the number that we closed at was just sort of a byproduct of it, So it was surreal. It was really surreal. And I would recommend any young designer or even established, designers to really try this out and really give yourself, those, few months to really develop your story and your brand when you launch on Kickstarter, and be totally invested in it. And people will love to hear that and the story. They love to be a part of it.
Yeah. Okay. I have a couple questions. about sort of funding all of this? And you don't have to give any specific numbers if you're not comfortable, but you spent 9 months, you spent 6 months planning and sort of making prototypes and running those by your community. And then you spent about 9 months building the campaign and testing and building out video and photography. And you invested in hiring experts, and obviously none of that's free. And so, I think a lot of people out there listening are like, well, where do I get the money to do this even to start? And so, how did you fund this?
So a part of my journey and my, as a CEO and founder, I realized that my biggest job is not only to create the vision, which I love, but to fundraise and to raise capital, raise money, which I don't necessarily like all the time. But I had to, I had to really get comfortable in raising the funding that we needed. And so as I was building out the vision and the product development and, making sure that our team was moving forward with all ends being met and covered, I also had to go, I had to develop a business plan. I had to work with, local banks and programs such as the SBA, Small Business Administration loans, and get that type of financing or funding that we needed in order to pay our team, in order to pay for the ads, in order to continue to operate and take care of expenses ongoing, because we also run a yoga studio. So all of that requires, takes operational expenses, and it requires us to have capital to continue and move forward. So a lot of the stuff, that I'm talking about, other designers wouldn't have to, or other entrepreneurs wouldn't have to necessarily deal with, right? So if you're not running another business and if you already have a full-time job, and you're doing something on the side and, waiting to prove, the concept with Kickstarter or whatever the case is, go with what you can fund. So you can't stop yourself because you don't have X amount. If you first of all, do your homework, figure out what you need. So anyone who's going to give you money is going to ask you, how much do you need and what are you going to use it for? If you don't know the answer to that, they're not likely going to trust giving you that loan or that investment. So find out what you really, really want, figure out how much it's going to cost, and then go out and check out for the resources and the programs that are available to entrepreneurs, to designers, and then start to, seek for funding there. It can come in the form of credit cards if you really need it, from savings, from family and friends, from loans, and it can go up to as much as investors, accredited investors. But if you don't have to go there, you don't have to raise hundreds and thousands of dollars or millions yet. You can start with what you have right now and figure out if it's enough to get you to the next goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and we don't need to dig too much more into the nitty gritty of the funding, because at some point, like you said, you just need to figure out what you need and then figure out how to get there. And there's a lot of different paths and journeys to take. So you guys did this crazy, insane Kickstarter, and now here we are. It's early November. When did the campaign end?
It ended on August 26th.
Okay, so a little over a month ago, about 5 weeks ago. No, little over 2 months ago. September, October. Yeah, okay. And so now you had this, 8 times your expectations. And so how are you keeping up with that? Like what's your production timeline? What's your plan now to sort of fulfill something that was 8 times as big as what you were expecting?
Yeah, so I just got back from a business trip to LA and met with my production and factory manager, and I'll be flying out to Colombia. I'm so excited in the next couple of weeks to do a factory tour and to, get the production going there. So in the past 2 months, we've been just finalizing all the little details that we needed to secure in our agreement with the factory, making sure that we have all the trimmings, all the materials, all the cost, ironed out. And we collected, from our backers, surveys that confirm the styles and the sizes and the types of underwear that they purchased or that they pre-ordered on Kickstarter. So we grabbed all of that, took that data, gave it to the factory. So doing a lot of that in the back end. That's what I've been focusing on. And where we're headed right now is we're looking to get production going in our factory. Throughout the holiday months coming up, and looking forward to getting the shipment out to our customers, our backers, probably a little bit after the holiday, so maybe January.
It'll be a nice post-holiday surprise in their mailbox.
It will be, yeah. I'm excited for them to finally receive it. And that's going to be the next cool thing, is now to build that engagement and dialogue with them. So we have this awesome Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group for all of our backers. Every time a backer backs us, we send them an email, thank them, and then give them a link, a custom link to join us on the Facebook group. And in that group, we share all of the behind the scenes pictures, videos, posts, things like that with our backers. And so they get first dibs on anything happening. So they're going to definitely see some pictures from me when I do visit the factory in Colombia, and I'll give them a personal tour of it as well.
Wow, I love that. Even more, you're just continuing this journey and keeping them involved in it and making them feel like a really special part of the process, and thanking them in such an awesome way for backing and supporting. Has that been a good experience? Like, how's that Facebook community been? Has it just been an awesome place to hang out?
It has been the best reason for putting together a Kickstarter campaign, because you get to really get to know the customers, the women who purchase blooms, whether it's for themselves or their loved ones, even men who purchased it for their significant others or maybe their family members. It's been really awesome, because then you get to see the name and the face behind the name, and then ask them, why they bought it. I create polls on the Facebook group, and I ask them, which feature is your favorite, or, what color is your favorite. So we get to really get to know each other, I guess, on a very human and a very normal, very casual connection and level. It's not a brand to a customer. It's, one person to the other. And that's how I like it. I like, it's a very, it's a very community type of engagement for me. So,
yeah, and that also, just from like a strategic marketing angle, that gives you priceless insights into, what they might want from you next. Like you said, like what features are their favorite? Maybe what ideas do they have? What was this pair missing that they'd love to see in the next design, or a different silhouette or a different color? And so now not only are you creating this awesome community of people and you get to know them and they get to know you, which is this amazing personal connection, but they get to help you develop the next round and the next round, which gives them exactly what they want and helps your business continue to grow and be successful. That's priceless.
Yeah, and that's why I thought that putting together the Facebook group like this, which was actually suggested by one of my other advisors on the Kickstarter team, to really get on a personal level and a very casual level with the backers. And so far it's been amazing. And I continue, we haven't really done any updates yet in the past couple of weeks, but we plan on sending another one within the next couple of days. And when we do, it's just been well received all the time. So I love our backers and I'm so thankful for them. So it's been nothing but fun for me.
This is so cool. Sarah, congratulations. This is such an amazing journey and story, and you've done so many cool things to engage with your community and your audience. And I think that's a huge reason why you're successful. Like, you can't look at this venture and do it in a vacuum all by yourself. Like, you got to get out there and involve a bunch of people.
Yes. Yeah. It's all about people. There's nothing more important than that. The product is just an output of, the collective, so it really is about the people.
Yeah. Okay. So to end, I'll ask you the question that I ask everybody at the end of the interview. And that is, what is one thing that people never ask you about working in fashion that you wish they did?
For me, it would be, where does your inspiration come from?
And where does your inspiration come from?
It comes from a higher source. And that's what I do it for. I do it for that. And for me, it doesn't matter if it's fashion, if it's a wellness, yoga, and fitness, venture. It doesn't matter if it's software, computer engineering, or a bakery. When you lose yourself into something bigger, when you pour your heart and work into something that's bigger than yourself, that's where inspiration will find you.
I love that. And you mentioned it a couple times earlier. You said, these ideas just took over you. You stayed up till 4:30 a.m. You had to do this. And it's like that takes over control. You become obsessed. I think you actually use that exact word. That's where it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, and I just happen to be lucky enough to have fashion as my vehicle, right? But it can apply to so many other realms of interest and passion.
I love that. That's a great sign to know that you're doing the right thing when it just takes over and you can't stop yourself from doing it. You have to do it. Burn the midnight oil. Yeah. Okay, Sarah, where can everybody find you and all the wonderful stuff you are doing online?
Awesome. So our website, our e-commerce site will be up and launched soon, but you can find us now at bloomsprivé.com. That's BLOOMSPRIVE.com.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Successful Fashion Designer Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit the show notes at sfdnetwork.com/31. And since you made it this far, you must have liked the episode. I'll remind you that you can use this episode as a way to provide value to people who you need to ask a favor of in the industry. So think about this. I always talk about relationships and talk about how it's really important that if you need something from somebody, it's also important that you give back. It's a two-way street out there. And so think about if there's someone out there that you're reaching out to, maybe you know them, maybe you don't know them, you're asking for advice on how to launch your label or some career advice, whatever it may be, pick out an episode that you think that they would really love and send that to them and say, hey, I thought you would like this episode because of these reasons. Be really specific and clear. Put some thought into this and share the episode with them. And then that's a great lead into asking, hey, and you know what, by the way, I would love if you could answer this question for me, or if I could grab a 5 or 10 minute phone call with you, or maybe even take you out to coffee. I do talk a lot about how this is a relationship business and how it's really important to continue to provide value. So think about a way you could pick out a podcast episode and share it with someone who you need something from, and that way you guys both win. Awesome. That would be really great if you guys could do that. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I always invite you to do that as well. You can do that at sfdnetwork.com/subscribe, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks again so much for your support, and I'll talk to you guys next week.